Of course, lawmakers here in the United States are keeping a very close eye on the investigation in Brussels. Senator Chris Murphy is one of them. He's also a member of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He was kind enough to join us this morning and part of a busy day to tell us what you're planning on doing about it. But first things first, just give us your reaction to what happened yesterday.
Well, this is another body blow to Europe. Our hearts go out to the victims and their families, but this is really a moment for us to do some true self-assessment about our relationship with Europe. The fact is that there are some real questions, specifically in Belgium, but continent-wide in Europe writ large, as to whether they have the capacity to track these cells and stop these attacks before they happen, rather than just doing the investigation afterwards. In Brussels alone, there are 6 different police departments that often aren't coordinating together. Every country has their own counterterrorism operation. It would be kind of like if the United States was trying to stop terrorism one state at a time with no national capacity, no FBI. And so I'm proposing this morning that we start to have some tough conversations with the Europeans, offer help, but require them to come up with a broad continent-wide anti-terrorism strategy as a condition of staying involved with the United States in some of our visa-free travel programs. We need to have some tough conversations with the Europeans now. Okay,
I'll get to the travel, the visa in a second. So you're saying basically there's sort of institutional dysfunction within Belgium and within Europe as a whole, because there's a lot of different countries all doing their own thing. What about the relationship specifically between the U.S. and the European Union? I've seen some criticisms that maybe it's one-sided, that we're giving them more than they're giving us.
So Europeans have always been allergic to the kind of surveillance programs that have been the bedrock of U.S. counterterrorism strategy. We have big surveillance programs that catch a lot of bad guys before they do terrible things. The Europeans are uncomfortable with those programs, but we've come to a resolution here in the United States where Republicans and Democrats both support those surveillance programs. The Europeans have to learn from us and start to increase the amount of surveillance they're doing to catch these guys first. And so I think that's the conversation that we've got to have. And if they are not prepared to increase their surveillance and increase their law enforcement capability, then we might have to be a little tougher on who is allowed to come into the United States from Europe. Right now, they have this visa-free travel. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that some of the attackers and plotters in Brussels, like in Paris, were actually European citizens that could come to the United States with few prohibitions.
Yeah, this is a slightly different thing than just being any sort of refugee crisis. So what are you specifically going to propose later on today?
So I'm going to propose that we do 2 things. That first, we require the Europeans to upload much more information into our communal databases about their counterterrorism investigations. Now, the way in which we stop these terror attacks from happening in the United States is through the no-fly list, right? We have a list of people in Europe that can't fly to the United States. Well, if the Europeans aren't uploading information about potential terrorists onto that list, then our no-fly list is no good. So we've got to require that every single piece of data that Europeans have goes onto that no-fly list. That's not happening today. Second, I'm going to propose that the Europeans look at a continent-wide anti-terrorism strategy in office, one they don't have today, and that we offer help to them through the FBI, through the NSA, to help them build that capacity. We can't make that decision for them, but we can certainly encourage them.
So this is just another example of the interplay between security and privacy. You understand that they think we don't have enough oversight on our data collection programs. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I think it was, but we passed a new law at the end of last year that cures a lot of the abuses in what we call the Patriot Act. We're going to require a lot more court oversight. And here's why this whole conversation is important, because the alternative, which some people are peddling on the presidential campaign, which is to patrol Muslim neighborhoods or stop all Muslims from coming to the United States, that actually will make us less safe, because the terrorist groups will use that as recruitment fodder. It feeds this narrative that the Christian world is at war with the Muslim world.
It's an ideological.
It doesn't make us more safe. These programs, these increased counterterrorism programs in Europe that we can help them build, that actually makes us more safe.
Okay. Lastly, I mean, you can recommend anything you want to the European Union. What do you do to, I don't know if compel is the right word, but how do you try to get them to listen to what you're saying?
Well, you know, we have this enormous leverage, which is this program that allows the Europeans to travel to the United States without a visa. And we don't need to continue that program if the Europeans aren't willing to share more information and tighten up their programming. So I think it's time to hold that program out as leverage to try to get some of these changes made.
A little bit of hardball between the U.S. and the European Union.
Well, it's time.
Yeah.